All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Bearded Gear podcast. We're on episode number 32 tonight, and I'm sitting down with my buddy, Bob DeMarco of the Knife Junkie podcast. And I have been on Bob's podcast 2 times now. He's been gracious host twice, and I have not even once yet. So it's about time that I finally have him here on my podcast in this forum. And I've been really looking forward to this episode in particular because I talked to a lot of other people with YouTube channels and stuff, but nobody that really does a podcast, especially from the angle that you do it from, Bob. So, Bob, how are you tonight, man?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Jake? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing well. It has been a long, not only day, but last like 2 weeks. So I'm kind of glad that I've got this like happening. The podcast is my happy space. So
right, nice.
I've been looking forward to it. So you've been doing your podcast for how long now?
It'll be 3 years coming up. Actually, in November. I think we started at the end of November 2018.
Okay.
Yeah,
doing
with
fun for the anniversary, or is it just
you know what,
blow right by?
Yeah, we're kind of probably blow right by the. I think we're more episode based. So when we hit 200 or when we hit 300 episodes, it'll be a big deal. 400.
Sure.
More like that. I think we kind of lost track of the time. It seems like it just started, and it seems like it's been going forever. You know what I mean?
The best things are that way, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I don't mean forever, like when you're waiting at the DMV forever, but like it seems like it's an ingrained part of my personality. You know?
Right. Have you ever worked a job that it felt like you were there for 10 years and you were there for a year? Like, that's a different sensation than the type of job. If you've worked on the contrary, one where it's like, feels like it's part of you, feels like you've been doing it for a long time because you're confident, but also feels like you just started. Like,
yeah,
I think that might be what you're kind of trying to describe.
Yeah. And actually, I'm experiencing that at work right now too, because like you, I've had a hellish couple of weeks, and I'm not used to that. I was very comfortable in my last position at work and could could do everything I needed to do and get like, wow, great work, Bob, and still have time to like on the side organize stuff for Knife Junkie, like send out invitations or do whatever, piddly, side work, and that's all dried up. So now I'm burning the candle at both ends. Gotcha. But you know what? That's the devil finds work for idle hands, and man, the devil could work well through me. So it's probably good I'm doing all this stuff.
Gotcha. Do you think that's going to be like a transitional period where it's going to be that level of burning the candle at both ends, or is that going to be kind of the foreseeable future because of this new role?
Well, no, I think it's like what you were saying. Once you kind of get into rolling with something, you get into a groove. Again, this will seem, I've been at the same place for 10 years. It's just a new position in that place. So, it comes with a lot of, there's a lot of known territory. So it won't take too long. And I'll have time to slack off at work. But right now, I just can't do it,
Yeah, you got to get acclimated. I feel you.
Yeah.
So is it appropriate to ask what, I know some people on YouTube don't prefer to say what they do outside of YouTube. What do you do for a day job if that's appropriate?
No, that's okay. I produce television and video content for local government in the DC area. That's about as, it's, I call it softcore propaganda because that's basically what it is. And I live in a great county. We got a lot of money in this county. So we got a well-endowed channel, and I have a lot of cool toys to work with at work, but the content, I'm not talking about knives at work. I'm talking about, government programs and stuff. So gotcha. I got the best, I got like, some of it's great. I have a lot of talented people around me and a lot of cool equipment, but man alive, it can get dry.
Dealing with some bureaucracy and lots of fun.
And actually right now, it's election day today, election day 2021, and we got the day off. Actually, they gave us the day off last year. I think they were very concerned that we go out and vote the way that we wanted them, that they wanted us to, and so they gave us the day off, took away Columbus Day, and so there was no excuse to get out and vote. So we did that today.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah. So being that you come from that world, producing content for a TV channel.
Man.
Did you find that it was a natural evolution for you to start this endeavor of the Knife podcast because it's a blending of what you do and your hobby, or what's the origin story of the podcast being created?
I started my channel in 2013, and that was Jim, the guy who produces the show.
I want to ask about Jim. Yeah.
Oh, he's a great guy, good buddy of mine, and we work together.
Okay.
He works in a different department, but I started producing when I first started working there. I was producing podcasts for him and for our Office of Public Affairs. I still do that, but during that time, we became friends. And hey, you should start a knife channel. And he's really Jim is really into figuring out like kind of online strategies and social networking, video kind of stuff. Like that's the stuff he's interested in. And
sure.
Excuse me, quite frankly, that's the stuff I'm not interested in that stuff. I'm interested in knives. He saw the content stuff that I'm interested in, my passion for knives, and he thought it would make a great pairing with his passion for the kind of stuff I don't like,
okay,
strategizing online stuff. So he said, start a channel. I started a channel, and this was before I had a good iPhone. It was 2013. And I would borrow a camera from work, this, kind of nice camera, but a big thing. And it was like this big freaking ordeal to make a video. So I would put one out every couple of weeks, and I would edit it, and it'd be like 20 minutes long. And
how long were you spending editing to get a video that length?
Not actually. The editing part wasn't so bad. It's that I wasn't so familiar with how to convert everything and the best way to, to get it ready for YouTube. Plus, right. YouTube wasn't ready for me either.
It wasn't as user-friendly back then.
Okay. That's a better way of putting it.
Now with an iPhone and an email, you can do everything on YouTube. Yeah.
That's what I love. You just shoot it and upload it. You don't have to worry about it. And I think that's what people like. Watch you don't edit, or very rarely do I ever see an edit in your videos.
Yeah, it's right. That's laziness more than anything else. But yeah.
But I think that's what people like. I know that's what I like as a consumer of knife content. I just like the off the cuff. Okay, I'm going to roll. I'm going to talk for 10 minutes about this knife, and then I'm done.
That's very good for a guy like me that you like that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And for me, I do like some of the more edited stuff. I love Advanced Knife Pro,
yes. Mark has been my favorite channel from long before I had a channel. I just find him endlessly entertaining.
And very talented. I mean, you watch how he shoots, and he obviously knows what he's doing. Yeah. I at work, to answer your question, this was not a natural fit for me.
Okay.
Because the way I work at work is I'm very meticulous, because I have to be, and my name goes on everything, and people see it, and it gets passed around, and then it gets uploaded, and it's on TV and stuff like that. And it's kind of like the guy who owns the pizzeria who comes home and doesn't want to have pizza at home. It's kind of like, I just want to shoot my video and talk about knives. I don't care about the video aspect of it.
Right.
So
you're secretly coming home and making calzones.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So you started the channel in 2013. I didn't realize it went that far back. And at that point, it wasn't a podcast. It was just knife video content. So was that full on reviews? Was it unboxings and the whole slew of what knife YouTube is now? Or what did that look like in terms of the actual videos you were uploading?
The actual videos were shot on the bar in our basement here. It was the only place that had good lighting. It was before I got ring lights and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And they were just kind of arduous. I mean, now that if I were to watch one now, it would be embarrassing, of course.
That should be the way it is. Anyone who goes back and watches their first videos, you should definitely have grown enough for it to be embarrassing. Otherwise, you're doing something wrong.
Exactly. I agree. So they weren't that interesting. They were just close-ups, and I would just kind of talk. But one thing that I laid out early, so that 2013 incarnation of the Knife Junkie was maybe 30 videos, and then I was just like, and I gave it up for a long time, and then came back to it. But the channel was still around, so I just
kept on going.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing I wanted to lay out early on is that my love for knives and my attachment to knives has a lot to do with weaponry. First of all, it's from my childhood for sure. Every man carries a knife on his belt, first of all, don't they? And then second of all, just the idea of knife fighting was always interesting, sword fighting. And then I started doing Filipino martial arts in the late 90s in New York, and really got really into it. And I was like, oh, this is a great excuse to collect knives. Like now I know what I'm doing because I'm being taught professionally.
Sure.
It's like levels of justification to knife collecting. And this was one level I learned. I'm like, oh, this is a great justification. I'm a martial artist now. I need my tools, so just go out and buy as many knives as you can afford. So I was sure up front in the early part of the channel to lay that out. I do definitely think of knives as EDC tools and kind of irreplaceable, or you cannot substitute a knife. Everyone needs one or two or however many, and you need to use them. But they are also weapons, and they also have a rich history as weapons. And that's interesting to me. That's like, I went to school for fine art, and I took a lot of art history. And before I took art history, I didn't know a thing about history. It's like I was interested in the art, and that's how I learned about the events that were happening, parallel to it. So it's kind of the same thing.
That's a really interesting perspective to come at it from, because I feel like, I don't know, I certainly get a number of comments sometimes, especially around certain types of knives, if it's a Microtech or something, where I'll get people who seem to disagree with some of the things that I say because I'm coming at it from a very EDC utilitarian perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I just try to avoid most of the time talking about them as defensive tools, because unlike you, I didn't spend the late 90s training in Filipino martial arts using bladed weapons, or edged weapons. That's just not a thing that I've gone down the rabbit hole for in any depth. So I tend to try to not add my voice to it because I am ignorant on the subject to a degree. I was raised by a dad. Sorry, my wife is apparently printing something, and everyone's going to hear that now. I was raised by a dad who's very self-defense oriented, has a CCW from the entire time that I've been alive, carries everywhere he goes. And knives were both things in our family. They were both a tool for opening packages and whatever needs to be done. And they were also seen as a self-defense tool. So I've had some training that trickled down through my dad, who had some formal training. And I've got a cousin who's owns several dojos and Japanese jiu-jitsu, and has done some training for military personnel. So I've had conversations with him, and he's shown me simple things, but I don't have this wealth of knowledge on it to the point where I can really talk about it at great length, or even compare different knives very well for how good they would be in a self-defense situation. Probably more than somebody who's not into knives, but I just kind of skim over that side of it because my comfort level is as an EDC tool, this is what I can test. In my week long of carrying this knife to prepare for the review, those are the things I'm going to do with it. I'm not going to get in a fight with it. That's yet to happen, So I kind of skim over those things. And sometimes people seem to feel, I get the sense that they feel like that's missing from my videos, like that I'm not bringing it up isn't the whole story of the knife. And I think that could be fair in some circumstances, but there's not really many channels that seem to talk about knives that way. So I like that your brain does that.
It's not a very savvy thing to do because it can get you in trouble, and because it can, I feel like, I don't know. Maybe this is a good excuse when I'm not feeling good about my performance on YouTube, but sometimes I'm like, I wonder if all this talk of weaponry is holding me back.
I'm getting throttled here.
Yeah, but who knows? I don't know. I don't care. This is not what I do to make a living, and it's not, but it is important to me, and it's something that I feel like it's important enough to me that I feel like there are others out there who want to hear it, but I understand that it's not the full picture, and it's not the full picture for me. It is an aspect, and it's an aspect of the knife hobby that really captures my imagination. And if something is like exercise, that's why I did martial arts in the first place. You couldn't catch me exercising, but as soon as you activate my imagination, oh, I'm kicking someone's butt here. Oh, okay. And then I can get the whole
for that.
Yeah, exactly. You can get the whole story in the background and everything. And then I can get interested. But, I feel like it's important to say that the knife training aspect, the Kali, I did a lot of Kali, Ino Santo Lacoste Kali mostly, and Pakiti Tersha over about a 12-year period. And then every once in a while, I'll dip my toes back in and I'm like, oh, I still got it. Can't breathe, but I still have the movement. And one thing that's important to remember when we're talking about all martial arts, but especially this, and especially like, I did a lot of Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee's, is that half of what you do, or I'm not going to put a percentage on it, but part of what you do is about self-preservation, learning the martial aspect, what are you going to do if someone attacks you in the street, or how do you walk into a bar and make sure that, you have a way to get out, and, these kind of things. Situational awareness and actual fighting to defend yourself. That's self-preservation. But a huge, probably maybe even larger aspect of it is self-perfection. All of these drills that you do, that when you do them and dilettantes watch you and they're like, oh, how fights don't go down like that. You're like, I get that. I understand that. But right now I'm training my speed and my accuracy and my, tactile awareness or whatever it is, I'm training my attributes right now. And this is self-perfection right now. So like a lot, that's why I like the Pikal style knives so much. Cause so this is the Pikal style tip down edge in style. This is a Copus design blade. I just wrapped it with string, by the way. But you see, this is what I was carrying today. This is the antimatter double edge. I usually don't carry it. Yeah. I just felt like it. But a lot of the Kali stuff, that thing. Now you got to talk. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
A lot of the Kali techniques are very
kind of fluid, right?
Yeah, fluid and intricate, and of course there are levels of that. But when the rubber meets the road, you're probably going to be stabbing, like shit,
right?
Like if that were a real thing. So self-perfection gives you the attributes that you need to possibly survive if you're actually in that situation. So I just want to put that out there, that when you see people doing flowy, intricate stuff and you think, oh, well, that never work. It's not really about taking that exact technique and putting it in the street. It's about the muscle memory and the things you learn through doing that kind of training.
No, I dig it. It's funny. I have a video on my channel that is by far exponentially the most viewed video on my channel, and it's my how-to on doing what I call my signature knife flip, if you can call it my signature knife flip, but it's just the way that I turn a knife around in my hand, right?
So cool.
And I used to drum a little bit when I was a kid, and it kind of came from that and just fidgeting with things in general. And so the number of comments on that video that say something to the making the point of, well, if you did this in a fight, you'd get like, it's like so obvious to me that I'm not putting that up there as a fighting technique. Like it would be the dumbest thing you could do, right?
Yeah.
But you get a whole bunch of people who that's where their mind goes with knives, and they're like, well, if you did this in a fight, you'd get wrecked. Just some other guy would just shoot you. Like it's like the dumbest thing. But there's also like this part of me that has always felt, the more familiar I get with having a knife in my hand, like working with it every day, fidgeting with it, all of that, learning the balance, the weight, the reach, all of those things by carrying and using a knife constantly, is actually probably decent training for if something ever went down where I needed a knife. Because if I'm used to cutting with the object, whether it's through cardboard or cordage or whatever, like knowing how to index and how the blade interfaces with my hand to my arm to my body, my reach with it, all of those things, like that's probably much better than somebody who only goes to a martial arts course a couple of times and spends a couple of days with a knife and then has like a knife on their bedside table or something. Right. Like there's a certain, I think, I don't know, just familiarity that comes with constantly using the tool.
Yes.
Like somebody who has a hammer and they decide to use it as a murder weapon is probably less dangerous with a hammer than somebody who swings a hammer every day.
Yeah.
Like they're really used to using the tool and hitting things with it, So I don't know. I just get this funny like reaction when people are like, well, you should never do that in a fight. And inherently I post a lot of videos doing that twirl thing and I get that comment seemingly unendingly. And it's like, obviously, if I was in an altercation, I wouldn't be doing weird spinny flippy moves with the knife to try to intimidate my opponent.
Yeah. Check me out. I mean, it's kind of a ridiculous thing to even bring up. And you say, and I agree with you. You say your familiarity with the knife, just in holding it in your hand all the time and doing your cool flip and being familiar. Oof, I almost cut my finger off. Being familiar with it, with the weight and whatever, and the size of the knife, way more familiar. It's like, I've if you add up years, I've done a lot of martial arts training, but I've also had a very easy life. I grew up with, I don't want to say sheltered, but I grew up, wanting for nothing, and I had an easy life, and there were plenty of guys my age at that time on the streets fighting all the time and surviving, and there's no way I would ever want to go toe to toe with those guys, with or without a knife, because they have the motivation, they have the experience, they have the real skills, and tested in the crucible, or whatever you want to say, of experience.
Real
And
hardening instead of simulated hardening.
yeah. For me, I get together with friends and we play with knives, and that's fun,
Right.
But and oh my God, I hope to heaven if I ever need it, it pops out and it works. But really for me, it's been a way to exercise and have fun and learn about knives and be able to be closer to knives without, and learn about them and stuff, without having to go out and fight.
Sure. I'm honestly a little bit surprised that it's not a bigger thing in the knife community. At least the knife community that I feel like I belong to. I don't know pretty much anybody who takes knife fighting courses, or maybe somebody will do like a 1 or 2 day thing that includes a knife fighting element, and they'll learn some basics or something. But it doesn't seem like a type of education that people in our world are really seeking. And I'm not sure why that is, because I think it would be a natural progression. Just like I would almost think like competition, like chopping challenges, like those kinds of things.
Yeah,
I'm
yes,
kind of
yes.
curious why that world isn't seemingly growing when the hobby of being into knives is so much.
Blade
I don't,
sports and stuff.
yeah, I don't know where the disconnect is.
I don't know, but you, sir, you're in Southern California, right?
Hmm.
You're in the golden land of places to learn knife fighting from, like, the greats. You're in an awesome spot for that.
I should
And
do it. I really should.
at Filipino Kali, or you find a Jeet Kune Do school. You're near the Ino Santos school. You go there and
Mhm.
learn your Kali. I mean, like, there's a lot around you. But I don't know. Maybe people are actively avoid that because they don't want to stigmatize their hobby, and I get that too. Like when Metal Complex had that issue, and it ended up being due to links and stuff. I don't know if you remember this, but he got knocked off YouTube for a little while, and there was kind of a mystery as to why at first, and it ends up some of his links went to sites that had guns on them or something ridiculous like that. But
Right.
there were a lot of questions at the time. Is it, because they mentioned weaponry in their repudiation of him, and he was like, I don't talk about these as weapons. I talk about them as everyday carry tools and daily accoutrement, to modern life.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too. Like, I totally get why, from the outside looking in, it would be like the people who are looking at them as weapons are probably the most sketchy. And I
Mhm.
think the types of knife enthusiasts who are passively interested in them as weapons are a little sketchy, maybe. It's like they have this fascination with violence. But I know quite a few people who are deep into martial arts, and most of them, if not all of them, I'll say most to be fair, are like the least sketchy people that I know.
Yeah.
It seems to bring a lot of like balance and respect for other human beings. And I think the same way with like competition shooters. I know people who are really into the firearms world in a competitive sense. And it's like borderline scientific thinking, like to get a skill set developed.
Yeah.
And it's not out of, I don't know anyone who's into it for like this bloodlust type of thing. Like shooting paper targets isn't going to give you that anyways. But I would think in like the knife fighting actual disciplines, there's probably not of like a lot of unhinged weirdos who are there for strange reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I've done, quite a bit of martial arts training over the years, different places in Philadelphia and New York, and now here in well, I say and now here over the past 10 years in Washington D.C. on and off area. I haven't really, like, there was one guy in the Henzo Gracie School in New York City who and I was there for 2 months. I couldn't afford it, and it creeped me out. I got to be honest. I was just not that competitive, and I was like, I don't belong here. But I was wrestling this one guy, and I was all right, for a blue belt. I was pretty decent. And this guy gets on top of me. He was way better than me. And instead of just choking me in any of the sanctioned ways you can choke someone in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he covers my mouth and pinches my nose. I'm like, what are you going to do? Stick a knife in my throat next? Like, this is creepy, dude. So I didn't go there for long. So maybe he was a little unhinged. But everywhere else I've trained, man, everyone is artists, business people, nerds, and cops. You know what I mean? And all of those groups, I don't know, have a way of analyzing things. And I think that's something about that draws people to martial arts, is that there's a lot to learn. It's infinitely complex.
Right.
And if you
you'll never find the bottom of a distinct martial art.
Right. And it's there was a period of time, and this didn't last for too long, but where I was pretty good at jiu-jitsu, the wrestling, submission wrestling,
Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu, yeah, and it was Hicks and Gracie kind of school, or not school, but his school of learning was what we were doing in my school, and there was a period of time where I was good enough to, when big guys would start at the school and be like, guys who way outclassed me in terms of size and strength, and be like, all right, roll with Bob. And they'd be like, they'd look at me, and I'm, kind of a skinny guy, or at least at the time I was. And they'd be like, okay, cool. And we start wrestling, and I did a little wrestling in 8th grade in high school. And, I wasn't very good, but I kind of know how they moved, and at that very beginning, before they got wise to jiu-jitsu techniques and stuff and started using their strength with technique, I could choke them out, and it felt great. It was like, yeah, look at the skinny guy choked out that big guy. Technique, and then that big guy would take a month of lessons, and then he'd school me. But you know what I mean? So I think martial arts might have a draw in that respect too. It can make you feel more powerful than maybe you have in the past, because you learn leverage, you learn what your body can do, that kind of thing.
I dig that.
Yeah.
So these days, do you feel like that's still a pretty big part of your channel, or do you how have you struck that balance? Do you feel like that's still a poignant part of your reviews, is like the self-defense aspect, or because of the way that social media is these days, do you try to mention it but not too heavily? Like where's that relationship now?
I think when it's obviously a self-defense knife, I'll talk about it and talk about it with glee. I think that I have I don't think I talk about it that much. I mean, I have some guests on the show like Michael Janich, and then we totally nerd out about on the topic, that kind of thing. But I think when I do my regular close-up videos, I don't call them reviews, because I don't give stats, and I basically put videos up of stuff I like. It's very rare that I'll put up a video of something I don't like. So it's not really a review. It's more like a gush session most of the time. But I don't feel like I mention it that much anymore. Sometimes I'll mention, sometimes it'll be off the wall. Like when I had when I was talking about the new Devil's Finger. I was like, this is just a great all around knife. But I was also like, it's very comfortable in reverse in pickle grip. If you needed to use this knife to save your life, this could be very effective. So I bring stuff up like that. And I feel like that's the filter I look at stuff through, but it's not who I am. I'm not some badass at all, let alone like an assassin or anyone who like is actually reviewing how good a knife is going to be in a fight. It's just, it's 50% imagination, 25% experience, and 25% just fun,
I don't know. I think you're secretly an operator, Bob.
Yeah, that's right.
So here's a good question. Since you started your channel, say like first couple of videos back in 2013, the types of knives that you were into back then, the things that caught your attention, how has that changed to now, end of 2021? Like, have your tastes evolved? Have they changed?
Yes, they've evolved. they haven't matured too much. I mean, I still, like,
Good, stay young, man.
yeah, like with this, I was like, oh my God, a folding dagger. I mean, I have to, at all costs, I have to get a folding dagger. Not maybe the most mature decision with $400. It's not an inexpensive knife, but it felt like something that was going to bring my life some joy. So it's changed mostly. I still like the same kind of knives, though I find myself gravitating more towards simpler designs than I used to. Before, the more choils, the more like curvy, recurvy, tanto-y, whatever, made it different. And like now I'm like fewer notes. Just give me like, I like a Sabenza now. Whereas before I was like, yeah, I like a Sabenza because I'm supposed to. But it's not, it doesn't get my heart racing. Now,
see, I don't like things that I'm supposed to like because I'm supposed to like them. That's probably part of why I always rag on the Sabenza. But so do you find, like, in making that switch from swoopy, curvy, like exciting looking things, do you think that has come because, like, visually your aesthetic preferences have changed, or is it more so like the more you've used them as tools, you've found that stuff gets in the way, or like where is that change stemmed from?
I think it's more the latter. I think I'm more interested in the universal now than I was before. I mean, anyone can pick up a Sabenza and hold it just fine. You don't have to worry about how big your hand is or where your fingers fit. I don't know if I have anything too dedicated on my desk, but like well, here's a good example of the old style that I still love. I love this thing.
I knew it was going to be a cold steel.
But it's got all these choils and places to get. I really think I think it's the materials are a big part of it. For a while it's just like I went through this period where I was like, no, it's got to be a great steel, and I guess G10 if I have to, but it's got to be micarta or titanium, something. So I got a little snobby with the materials, but I think in that process, I've just become, I guess my tastes have just simplified a little more and I am getting older. I mean, we all are, and now I'm starting to think of like, what are the classics and what are the things that I want to carry every day? And I want to carry this every day. I want to carry this every day. And it's getting simpler and simpler. Whereas before I was like, oh, that'll fit in my pocket. I could totally, no one's going to know I'm carrying this. Like it was more about getting away with something, or like how close to a sword can I carry around on a daily basis? I
love that. So as this is endlessly intriguing for me, the way that people kind of develop in the hobby, if you will. So I don't know how far the hobby goes back before you YouTube channel. We can talk about that, but even just from that starting point, has like the median price of what you spend per knife gone up quite a bit, or has that remained pretty steady? How has that relationship been in terms of like what range of the market you buy in?
Yeah, that has changed quite a bit. So I am now like firmly in the super budget or the expensive. And to me, expensive is $200 or more.
Okay.
Because, but I get the most joy out of a super cheap, not super cheap, but in a high value, inexpensive knife, or a more expensive, like classic knife, like the VSEP or something like this. Like those are the places I get. I don't really want a $175 Spyderco, and it's not because it's a Spyderco or because it costs $175. Though I do love the Yo Jumbo, and there are some exceptions to that.
But yeah, you're the needle for you.
Right, and you're right. It's that as you progress, it's this. Apostle P had a video called He's great. The Progressive Insanity of Knife Collecting, and he actually addresses this in that video. And now it's kind of just recently, past couple of months, I'm like, geez, my intake of knives has really slowed. I mean, I have a lot of people sending me knives, which I really appreciate and I like, because it exposes me to things I wouldn't ordinarily be exposed to.
Sure.
But the knives that are coming in for me, that I'm buying, that I'm spending money on or seeking out, feverishly on blade forums or wherever, that's gone down recently. And I'm like, why Why is that? Am I losing my lust? Is this an issue? Is
Spark
this
again. It always does.
Well, no, it's just because my interests have gone more expensive.
Sure.
And I can't, you understand. I have a family too. You can't just like be constantly dropping. So unless you can borrow or find a great deal, it's less and less now. But to me, that's also a good sign because it means I'm becoming less acquisitive and more about the quality and more about what am I going to keep? What am I going to give to my daughters? What am I going to like? What do I have to sell before I get too old? That's something you got to think about, really.
Yeah.
You don't want to leave your family with, 350 knives that they have to figure out what to do with.
Right. Just bury them with you. That's better.
Yes.
So do you find yourself selling knives to fund new knives often, or are you more of a collector in the sense that like most of the time when you buy it, it's kind of yours?
Yeah, that's I like to say I'm going to sell knives to fund new ones, but usually what happens is I can't decide on what I'm going to sell, or I think about it when I'm away from my collection, and then when I get back to it, I'm like, I can't sell this. You might know what that's like. So ideally, I would like to be, Blade Freak on I don't know if you know Blade Freak. So yeah, he's got a very structured system where he's got about 10 to 12 knives at once. And when he gets a new one, he moves one on. And ideally, that's what I would like to do.
I've known a few people who can do that, and I'm not one of them.
I can't do that. I get sentimental, which is stupid, about a material thing, unless it was, unless someone gave it to you and it's an actual thing to be sentimental about. But it's like, oh, I remember when I first fell in love with this. Who cares?
Right.
That's just your excuse. That's just your justification for holding it.
Yeah.
So I would like to be that guy who sells knives to buy new knives. So I'm still working on that.
I gotcha. I try to be. That's one of those where like it kind of has to come in waves for me. And it's usually I have to have sufficient motivation, right? Like my resources are quite finite in terms of what I can spend on knives of like new money that's being made in my household. That's a very small number, but I have a pretty vast collection of knives that's valuable. So when I want something that costs a lot, I have to sell a few things that cost a little to medium amount, and then boom, I have enough for the knife that costs a lot. So like, yeah, just a couple weeks ago before Blade Show West or California Custom Knife Show, which just happened, I sold 14 knives in
I
2
saw
days.
some of your postings. I was like, oh, he's getting rid of that.
Yeah.
Like, what is?
And every time I do that, a lot of people ask me like, why are you selling this knife? And it's like, oh, because I'm hoping that when I get to the show, I'm going to get this knife. Like it becomes real simple when my eye is on the prize.
Yeah.
But if I'm just generically looking at my collection, feeling like I should sell some things, there's usually only like 2 or 3 knives that are an easy sell for me. And then the rest are like, I don't want to let that go. But then as soon as there's the carrot dangling in front of me, it's like, I look at it with totally new perspective, and boom, I can move 10 pieces because I'd rather have this knife than the 7 or 8 or 9 that I sold to fund it. And that just kind of like makes it make sense in my brain. But yeah, it's got to be under the right circumstances for that tactic to even work,
Right. And when you've done that, you've also done the great thing of reducing the size of your collection, which I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think everyone is constantly trying to reduce the size of their collection. I'm going to reduce and refine and make it it's going to be this perfect little, and then I'll never have to get another one again. It's like my brother likes guns, and he went through a period of time, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something like that, where he's just buying and just, oh my God, he had this collection going. He's like, I did it, Bob. It's done. I don't need anything else. And I'd be like, you don't have anything with a polymer frame, Vic? And he's like, oh, and then he's off getting another. But I think the goal is to get it just right and to get it down to a number where you're carrying them all.
Yeah.
And you're not just like, I mean, I have an apartment building basically of knives, and they sleep soundly most of the time. And then occasionally,
right.
But for me too, I'm like, oh, well, they're cast members in this show that I do because, every Wednesday I do a supplementary show and I show off knives, and I like to have them. So, again, another justification to keep the numbers up.
Yeah. I think there's an allure to distilling it to bringing it like making it smaller and more potent and more perfect is certainly kind of where I feel I'm at. But I do think there's like two schools of thought on knife collecting. I'm sure there's more than two, but generally speaking, there's the people who are trying to get that perfect core group of having all their bases covered. And for me, a lot of that is like utility. Like I need an ultimate outdoor folder. I need a perfect waterproof folder. I need the best slicing folder. I need a gentleman's carry or 6. Like I need, like all of these boxes to be checked.
Yeah.
And then I don't necessarily need the fluff around it if that box I feel is perfectly checked. But there's another type of collector who for California Custom Knife Show, my buddy Thomas Moore came into town. I don't know if you know him. He's avid Spyderco collector, one of the creators of the Millie Club. And he slept on my couch while he's here. He's a buddy. I had been to his house up in Portland before. And
nice.
He came down. We had a lot of just really fun, interesting conversations while he was here. But we were both poking fun a couple of times at the type of people who, and if you're one of these and you're listening or watching, I'm sorry, I'm about to drag you through the mud. But the people who go to take a collection shot of their knives, and they will find every knife under every couch cushion and in the junk drawer and out of the kitchen, just so that their collection picture looks bigger and like the truck knife is in it and all these things, right? And they'll take a terrible like shot on a potato photo of their 180 something knives, and they'll put how many there are, like they're so proud of the number. But you look at it and it's like, I bet if you really pressed them on whether they're proud on a lot of the knives in that picture individually, they'd be like, well, I've just had that one forever. They'd have some answer for it. It's not actually like most of the stuff in that picture is meaningful to them. They're chasing the number of like, I have 180 plus knives. And I get those people in my comments. As a collector who has 217 knives, I could say, and it's like, I don't care how many old CRKTs you have. And like, that doesn't, to me, that's meaningless because I'm more the box checker, right? Like I like to do collection updates on my channel, and I really need to do another one where like, if you watch my first collection update video when I started my channel, and then you watch the one I'm about to film, worlds different. My collection, it has completely changed, and I'm so much happier.
That's gratifying.
Right now. And I would have been like, my collection now would have been aspirational to me a year and a half ago when I shot that first one. Like I wouldn't have had an easy time believing that my collection got this good, and that's exciting to me. But yeah, to some people the number is exciting, and that means not letting knives go, so it's like,
like I take pride, and I don't want to say I take pride in this necessarily, but I like the fact that I don't have any idea how many knives I have. I have a tool chest, like a craftsman tool chest.
With an even bigger flex than the counter, Bob.
Oh yeah.
I have so many, I don't know how many there are.
That's how I don't do the mathematics. Math can really mess up your head if you're like, how many hours have I spent wasting time over the past year? Let me do. You don't want to do the math, and oftentimes you don't want to do this. Yeah, you don't want to do this kind of math either. But I have my chest with all the top flight stuff. I got stuff on the wall. I got stuff in the car. I got stuff in my bedroom. Stuff all over the place. Yeah. And I kind of like that. I will probably never do a full collection video. It'll be like, oh, these are all my folders, or this is everything in the red chest, or this is. But just like not exactly knowing makes it better, because A, you don't have to guilt yourself over it, and B, it also shows it's not about the amount that you're,
right. And you can plead ignorance if your wife asks how many. I honestly don't know. I don't know how many there are.
You know what, baby? Half of these are sent to me by people, Yeah.
It's just, this is what I do.
Yeah. It's part of the thing. Wait, there was something that you brought up that it'll pop up in my mind again, but it has something to do with the collecting instinct, but now it escapes me.
Well, when it comes back, you jump right in. Okay, so I want to dip back a little bit because you mentioned Jim and you talked about him a little bit, but my experience with Jim has been like, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. I'm not trying to diminish what you do, but the way that you do your podcast, I don't know if people realize how masterful Jim is at, like, I don't know if you want to call it the control board or what, But the first time I was on your podcast, I appreciated his presence, but I didn't even, because I didn't have my podcast yet, I didn't fully understand how incredible of a tool he really was. Not calling you a tool, Jim. But last time, like literally every time I would go to take a sip of my water or whatever it was that I had, he would masterfully, he would notice me reaching, and he would take that as a moment to make you full screen. And like his transitions were perfect. He's putting links up about whatever the person is talking about. Like, it is remarkable. He's like Jamie on the Joe Rogan
podcast. Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think he's kind of an unsung hero in the sense that he's typically, like, it's very rare for him to be seen on your channel. But how has that relationship worked out? Because I feel like your podcast, and I've said it, I think, on your podcast, it's like, in terms of production value for this format of content, no one else in the knife world is coming close. Like, you guys are putting on a show, and you're doing it a full-on like interview episode, and you're doing your live show, which he's also doing the control board for. Like, you have this ability that other channels just don't have, and I think Jim is so much of that. So how has that worked?
It's worked great. I mean, Jim is I mean, the show would be like completely different without Jim. Jim is well, I mean, okay, let me go back to, you were talking about the switcher. Like, he is he's directing, you know, he's doing a beautiful job of directing. And this is the first time he's directed video. Now, as I mentioned before, he works in public affairs, and so he's done plenty of outward facing messaging and that kind of stuff. And, you know, he's been doing podcasts for our job for longer than I've been there. So I think 12 years he's been doing them. So he's got a great voice for radio and all that. But he just is really fascinated with, you know how you can't always tell what's going to grip you, what's going to grab you and excite you. And he loves this, and he loves directing this podcast. And I know he wants to do more, and he would just do a bang up job. And so hopefully he does produce more. But he's the one who found for us the StreamYard tool and figured out all the great ways to use it, and they keep updating. I think
you guys were the pioneers pretty much of using this platform for it. You're the first people that I saw use it, and immediately when I was like, I'm going to do a podcast, I was like, I should do StreamYard because that seems to work really, really well.
Yeah. You know, a couple of people asked us, and I think it's awesome, dude. I think it is awesome. Actually, I've tried to tell people at work who are trying to do live streaming in different ways. I'm like, oh, no. You got to check out StreamYard, but they don't want to hear about it, you know, whatever. But so Jim, like, part of why Jim is like fascinated with getting better and better and better at this. And he spends his off time investigating it because he's interested in it. Just like I spend my off time investigating knives and knife makers because I'm into it. And, okay, don't take this the wrong way, but in a lot of ways, Jim and I, our relationship, our working relationship is similar to a marriage in that, in a marriage, at least in the marriage I have, and it's worked so far, and it's a good time for 14 years, is that two people show up with two different strengths, oftentimes polar opposites in a lot of ways. And Jim and I are in a lot of ways, and we're similar in a lot of ways, just like me and my wife. Sorry to
overlap.
Sorry to make that parallel, but he's got things he's really interested that I don't care about. Honestly, I love the result. I love how great the show looks, but I do this stuff all day at work on different equipment and stuff. But all I care about is showing up and talking about knives. And of course, there's more to it. I got to find guests and do research and all that kind of stuff. But really, he does the hard work. To him, it's not hard work.
Administrative stuff,
because he enjoys it. But that technical stuff, and you know, we had trouble with our RSS feed for a while. He slogged through that, figured it out. Like that, to me, I was like, let's just change hosting companies. He's like, all right, just slow down. You know, so Jim's a great guy. as a person, he's just an awesome guy. And I'm glad we became friends over these 10 years. I think both he and I are a little not in any way standoffish, but when I first met him, it wasn't like I want to be your friend. It was just like, all right, we'll work together. And then over time, that's how most of my good friendships have started, slowly.
Yeah.
So
same. I have rarely found good success with somebody long term who was like a too fast of a friend, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's a personality type thing or what, but I don't do well with people who are like really excited to meet me.
Yeah, know what you
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I want people to have the same energy I do about becoming acquaintances, where it's like maybe on the fourth time that we've shook hands,
Yeah.
we can get a little deeper.
Two wolves circling.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting hearing you describe it that way, because I'm thinking about like even people that I've met recently, and it's like if they seem a little too maybe networky, or like they're too excited to meet me, then I feel like they want something out of me and I push back.
Well, that instinct is probably correct.
Sometimes maybe I'm pushing away people who could be great, but I don't know. So here's a question that would be unique to you. I've interviewed quite a few other people who make YouTube knife reviews and stuff, but you're the first, I think, like proper podcaster that I've had on here. And you in particular do a lot with guests. If you were to look at how many episodes have you done?
We're on like close to 270, I think.
Goodness. Okay. So way past me. If you were to look across those 270 or so episodes, are there any that really stick out in terms of like the guest that you had, or like anybody who was like, I don't think you've had Lynn Thompson on, I imagine.
No, I've been okay. So yeah, well, first of all, 270 podcasts. That includes
some are solo.
Well, yeah. So half of I'd say 2/3 of those are the solo Wednesday show, and then we do the even numbered shows are the interview shows on Sunday, and then the odd are the Wednesday, and then we don't number Thursday Night Knives. So Lynn Thompson was a special project for mine for a while. I came very close to having him on the show, and he was very well, kind of I don't want to say difficult to work with. That's not what I mean. It was like he was very particular about times, and very particular about length of the show that he wanted to be on, and then it just the trail went cold, and his assistant wasn't returning my email. So I'm
a little more red tape than a typical small solo maker.
And then in speaking with John Demko kind of offline about him, because I am fascinated with Lynn Thompson. And who
wouldn't be fascinated with Lynn Thompson?
Who wouldn't be?
You see one video of Lynn Thompson living his life and you should be fascinated.
Yeah, but well, this isn't a private conversation, but between you, me, and everyone else who's watching, he makes me uncomfortable to watch. He embarrasses me a little bit to watch, though I love his product, and and he's a badass. I mean, make no mistake, he might be a portly guy, but he can move. That guy can move, and he's done a lot of training over the years. But and I'm like, okay, so I was talking to John Demko about Lynn Thompson. I'm like, kind of feeling him out. Like, is there any way you could make an introduction, help me get in the door? And I think John figured out what I was getting at, and he's like, I worked with him for a long time, and he's a good guy, but he's very interesting guy. And I was like, okay. He's like, he's not always like the most comfortable, and I'm not trying to speak out of school, and I'm not trying to betray a confidence with John or talk smack about Lynn Thompson, because I do admire the guy, but I could also see what he meant. A little bit awkward. And he didn't want to be asked. And I knew that it was basically laid out to me that I was going to have to submit questions and
kind of scripted.
And like you mentioned up front, we do have structure to the show, but I just, like you, I kind of jot down bullets and then kind of set them aside. And if I need them, I glance over at them And sometimes you do. Some people aren't that loquacious, and you gotta, have more questions to bring up. And I think that would be the case with him.
Probably.
But basically, it was kind of laid out to me that if you want to talk about cold steel products, maybe check out the Stickman. So I'm gonna see if I can get that guy, the new gentleman on. I want to get Lynn Thompson on. Maybe it's going to take a little more time. Maybe he needs a little more distance. But I mean, what a mind! And what I mean by that is like he really has done so much for this hobby, And one of the ways that I think he's done the biggest service is through this kind of thing where he takes historical designs that I've always loved. I've always loved the Navaja. To me, it's like it's beautiful to look at, and there's a mystique around it that I've always loved. And then he came out with this damn thing, and looked at one in his own collection, kind of worked up as a modern version of it. And here we have one in S35VN and aluminum bolsters, and I love that about that guy.
Yeah.
Oh, you want a combat ready barong? Oh, we have that too. Oh, you need a halberd or a spear? We got that too.
I had their poleaxe back in the day, and that thing was the collection of cold steel. It wouldn't even make sense to call them tools. It was legit weaponry that I had as a relatively young kid. Is alarming. A, that my parents were okay with it, and B, just that I amassed such a collection of it. But I had spears, I had the poleaxe, I had the mace.
You had the mace? Did you have the warhammer?
I had the warhammer.
Awesome.
I had the city stick, which is a like gentleman's looking cane that you can just obliterate like 2x4s with. I had like so much stuff, and I loved it. And I would go to their parking lot sale every year. I think we talked on your podcast.
Yeah.
You would ask who I would want to show the Avant to. Like if there was a hero I could put in the hands of. And I don't think you were expecting Lynn Thompson to be my answer, but it was, because
certainly wasn't.
That was my childhood knife idol is the weird word. Cause even then I felt like he was kind of a weirdo, but in a way that was like, he's an enigma of a human being.
Yeah.
And he goes really to work every day and chooses violence. He just throws spears at stuff and calls that his job. And I'm sure the man like had to work incredibly hard in specific ways to create that company to become what it was. But by the time I became aware of him, so much of his life was like hunting trips and practicing sword fighting and
tactical playboy.
I had like several of their swords, which were like legit swords, and we cut pumpkins in half and all kinds of fun stuff with them, and it was wild.
I can't help but notice you keep referring to these awesome cold steel implements in the past tense. What happened to them, Jake?
So most of them ended up getting left at a good friend's house when I moved out of town. And then by the time I came back, I think his family had moved. And so they were like in a storage unit somewhere or something. Some of them are probably still in my parents' garage somewhere, but also with a kid in the house, by the time my daughter was born, I didn't want to like go get these things back and have them around because they're a little intense and I'm living in an apartment. But there will come a time where I'll have an impressive cold steel, not folding knife collection, but a large battle warfare weaponry collection again, because they're just so fun. Like,
and there aren't too many people out there doing that kind of thing.
No. There's a lot of like cheap, cheesy, like not very well done represented, like, I don't know, gladiator swords and stuff that you get out of a catalog. But to have like the Chinese war sword, which they will show you will cut a pig in half. And just be able to like that stuff it's not a big market, and cold steel makes such a variety within it that it's kind of mind-boggling that they do.
It is mind-boggling. I guess that can only come from a successful company. You're not going to come out of the gate selling gladiuses, probably, unless you're selling to LARPers. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned, well, first of all, someday they will, several thousand years from now, they'll excavate that storage unit and they'll be like, a great warrior was buried here.
Oh, he sure did.
Wouldn't it really? But you mentioned someday you'll have a collection of their weaponry, but not their folding knives. How do you feel about their folding knives? What's your take on their stuff?
I think they're incredibly interesting that they exist, and I'm glad that they do, but
Mhm.
they're not really for me. If I had them, they'd be novelties.
Mhm.
And for me, with folding knives, I don't feel like I have much space for novelties just
Mhm.
because I'm so critical of that like sphere. Like if I'm buying a
Sure.
sword, it doesn't actually have to be practical and incredible, right? It could just be purely out of coolness factor. And
Yeah.
I do that a little bit with knives. Like I buy some knives that are just coolness factor and they tickle me in a way. But a collection of like giant cold steel folders for me, I wouldn't be as excited about it. I see it as I might as well go all the way. Like the swords
Yeah.
are the all the way thing, you
Right.
know.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. You have the past couple of days. Well, you just held up your hawk, right? Your
Yes.
uh,
Deadlock Model C.
good Lord, what a beautiful creation that is, man.
It's a winner for
A-
sure.
and then you also posted another dagger out the front like 2 or 3 days ago. I don't know what it was. Yeah,
This guy, this is the
yeah.
new Axial Gear Shift.
Axial gear shift.
They're a
Okay.
new US company making these, I don't know where, but in the United States. It's even got the flag on it. I don't know if you can see that.
I can't, but man, I like that.
Yeah, these are $200 US made
Really?
double action OTFs. I mean, it's not the Deadlock. Like
Yeah.
the unfair thing about the Deadlock is now no other OTFs feel impressive. If
Hmm.
that makes sense. Like
Hmm.
I can
Sure.
still respect them for having known what OTFs were prior to the Deadlock, but it just makes other ones kind of feel silly. And this one,
Yeah.
like any Microtech, is going to have some blade play, and
Yeah.
it's not perfect like the Deadlock is, but it also you can buy 5 axial gear shifts for the cost of one
R-
Deadlock.
Right. Well, so the reason I bring these up, excuse me, is that so are these like well, I don't know what the legality is in California, and
It's
I
not
guess
good. I'll tell you
it's
that.
not good. Okay. All right. So are these your version of my like cold steel huge knife collection? Are those the knives that you collect that are not practical, that are outside of that realm you were just talking about?
Kind of. They dance the line,
Hmm.
right? Like the Deadlock is not gonna be the best EDC knife. It's not meant to
Mm.
be. It's a dagger ground, double edged. Like
Yeah.
this is for opening humans, not boxes.
Yeah.
And it will open boxes, right? Like I talk about that in my review. It's the blade geometry is not meant for slicing tasks. It's a piercing blade.
Mhm.
But the edge that Gavin puts on these is unreal. The tip is so remarkable that to cut into delicate little things, it's amazing. Like one of the best edges I've had on a knife, period. So it's actually kind of fantastic to cut with. But yeah, it's like, do I carry it? I'll let you decide for yourself because I don't want to say anything incriminating here.
Mhm.
I'll wink at you, but it, it's like, yeah, it's mostly super, super exciting, which is
Yeah.
why I own it because it's a ton of fun. But I get enough function out of it, and it does go in my pocket comfortable enough that it's like an acceptable balance.
Okay.
Whereas when I've tried knives that are just crazy, I don't know. I'm trying to even think of. I guess folders. I haven't gone that deep down the line, but like I don't know if you're familiar with Microtech. A while ago, put out a Borka dagger called the SBD dagger,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
double-edged fixed blade dagger. Thing was awesome. I bought one, and it was like $300, maybe 350, something like that. And I was super stoked to get one. I got a number that I think happened to be my lucky number, and it was like, oh, this thing is so cool, right? And then after a little while with it, it was like, I don't have a tactical vest I'm putting this thing on. It doesn't make sense for me to bring outdoors with me.
Mhm.
I'm like, if I'm reaching for a self-defense knife in the house, I'm reaching for a gun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's
Right.
not. It doesn't. I couldn't find enough utility in it, and it was worth so much to resell that it was like it made way more sense to let go of and just enjoy it for a season. And I
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
doing that, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Where's that line for you? Do you find like do things have to work well in your life for you to keep them, or can it just be it makes the nerd in you happy?
It's been a lot of the latter, making the nerd happy. Cause I mean, I have a sizable collection of fixed blade knives that, I'm not carrying my Randalls around with me or the Spartan
I've
Harsey
seen
dagger.
in your garden though. Sometimes you're getting those things out.
Well, maybe a little here and there. But yeah, so I have a lot of that stuff. Actually, I have more than I'm almost comfortable with. And it's not a ton. It's not like Jimmy Slash numbers, but um, I have more than I need of stuff that I'm not carrying and using. I mean, some of it's on the wall behind me, obviously. Like to me, it's a just to have the stuff and to appreciate it. It's a lot like art. And I went to art school, and I'm a fine artist by training. Okay. Whatever that means. This was something that was possible at a time. I would never go to fine art school now. Let me just put it that way. But I did when I did, and I grew an appreciation for things beyond just. At least I like to tell myself that it's like I don't have this VSEP because it's a VSEP. I have it because it is. It captivates me. It's unbelievably beautiful to me. And then I put it in hand once I was lucky enough to actually get one. And it feels as good as it looks. And to me, like those qualities give me some of the same thing I get from art. The only difference is I can use this. Art I can't use. I can only use art for contemplation and for visual, and for eye candy or appreciation.
There's no tangible interaction.
Exactly. So I really get an artistic appreciation thrill out of knives, as well as everything else. Just to have them, to look at them, to hold them, to open them and consider them and see how they were made. And that's kind of how I am. That's part of my fascination with guns. I do like to shoot, and there is an undeniably inherent aesthetically pleasing thing about guns. But really what I love them for is the way they look, feel, and how they feel, because they're machined so
mechanical,
tightly. And there's something about that. So all of those things add up to it's an art appreciation experience outside of everything else, which also makes it difficult to part with these knives. And is that another layer of justification? Could be, but I don't know. It's me, and it brings my life joy.
Yeah.
Not joy. I shouldn't say joy. My kids bring me joy. It brings me some sort of satisfaction.
Sure.
And
you don't have to say they bring you as much joy as your kids. I don't think anyone's arguing that, but it can be a form of joy.
Well said. And you can hold one of these things in your hand and contemplate the history. And that's kind of interesting to do too. Not that I do that often, but since we're having this conversation, you're holding up a dagger. Some of the very first knives were double-edged flint napped, or napped flint. Yeah. And they looked a lot like that dagger, medial ridge and, two even sides, and,
an obsidian spearhead that broke and has just enough handle left on it to now be a knife. And
right. So what is it for you, Jake? I mean, I know I've asked you this on my show, but I mean, like, I know it's multidimensional, like, what, and obviously it's something deeper than just I like them, because you probably also like cars, and you probably also like cool shoes or whatever, but you don't have a channel about those things.
If cars cost what knives do, I would absolutely be down.
That's right. You're an air-cooled Audi guy.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I feel like as you were explaining your relationship to knives, I found it resonated with me a lot. And I find I like your tastes in general. I think we have pretty congruent tastes. And there are some ways, kind of like you described with your wife, where you're not the same, but there's some overlap, right?
Yeah.
I think in a different season of my life, I will probably collect more like you do, where I will have more things that I don't even anticipate maybe ever carrying, but I just enjoy the richness of the object itself, and just every now and then being able to hold it. Like I remember when I was a kid, my dad had an immense gun collection, and in his office, he had in a glass case an old single action really patinaed, beautiful revolver. And I don't remember what it was. I was young by the time he moved out of that office, and I don't know where that gun ended up, but he had this gorgeous revolver that was just, I think it had ivory handles or grips on it, and it was like just really cool patinaed steel that it looked great, right? And had some brass components. And I remember when I was in his office, while he wasn't busy, if I asked him the right way, he would let me handle it. And it was never loaded. It was, I mean, proper gun safety. Of course, we checked it for you internet police out there, but he would let me hold it. And I couldn't dry fire it, but I could cycle it and move the hammer back up. And I remember just like the sensation of getting to interface with that object for what it was really special. And I still really love stuff like that. Like I appreciate the connection to the object that's possible, especially maybe it's a male brain thing or I don't know what, but like mechanical, intricate things that are crafted in a way where they don't feel sloppy, where they feel precise and where it works. Like something about a thing working feels right to the brain, or I don't know. So I think I'll get there. I think when I'm not in an apartment, when I have, instead of a 2-bedroom little place for my wife and my kid and me, if we have a room that can be a dedicated office, like, or a section of the garage that is my man cave or whatever it may be, then I can start to go a little crazy and get those things that don't have to have utility. But right now, everything is so kind of like stacked on top of everything, and we're constantly in a mode of figuring out what we can get rid of so we can still fit here.
Yeah.
That like, I don't have the mental capacity to bring in things like that, because my brain immediately goes to, well, where am I going to put it? And then if I put it there, how often am I going to get it out to actually use it? Otherwise, I need that storage space for something else.
And how much am I taking from the family resources to indulge? You know, and I'd like to say that I've never done that, but I have. It was in the past, and it was with $60 knives, and things have changed. But that was a thing, and I remember feeling badly about it. And I remember exactly what knife it was. It was a knife I didn't need. It was a cold steel. It was a cold steel. Recon 1. Yep. And I lost it in the park shortly after I bought it. And, but that's another thing. You know, you're a young man, you're a young father too, you know, and as you get older, I'm considerably older than you are.
And a year or two on me.
I got a year or two. Yeah. And as you get older, even if you're not planning on it, you accumulate more space, money, time. Well, no, not time. Not time.
Time is the
less
one thing
less time.
less of.
But, you know, 11 years ago when we first moved in here, and I just remember because of, you know, I moved from New York to here, so I can remember this period of time pretty well. I remember filling up my tank was $60. It still is. And it was a different car, but still is. And I remember the times, the knives I wanted at the time were $60. And I was like, I can't, you know, you know, so to me that was, and, you know, my wife and I have grown since then, and you know, things just get better unless they get worse. I don't know how else to put it. And so it becomes a little bit easier to have a couple of more, you just accumulate more. And like I, at one point, had so many knives that I could trade in to get my first Hinderer. That's how I got my first Hinderer, is from collecting so many $60 knives.
Yep.
You know, you could sell those and trade up and
pool it together.
Yeah. So, you know, all in good time. I feel like, you know, and I'm not talking, this is definitely not, I'm not talking about you in this case. But, you know, we live in this immediate instant gratification time, and, you know, I'm just as prone to, or just as, I can fall victim to it just as much as anyone else. And you see that new, like for me, it's well, I mean, there are a lot of knives I want, of course, but like that new the new
the Arcane Abyss.
The Arcane Abyss.
I was like, pre-ordered one. Yeah.
That's pretty damn cool. Like, but you know, I'm not racing right out to spend $400 on it. I'm just not. Right. And you know, if I were a single man or a retired man or, you know, a rich man, I would, and that wouldn't be an issue. But that's kind of like, it's a valuable gatekeeper. You don't want to become a rabid materialist.
Yeah.
and have this stuff mean nothing.
It's really funny that you mentioned that, because something that I've been kind of tossing around my own brain lately, I've kind of graduated to a next phase of knife collecting in the way that I analyze it, where the knives I'm buying lately are way more expensive than what I was buying a year ago, right? I wasn't playing at all with customs a year ago. And like, if I went to a show, I wanted to see the production stuff. There was like the production stuff, or the custom stuff, I appreciated because I was a lover of knives, but I didn't see it as a thing that was for me, because I didn't see the value there, right?
Right.
And now lately, like in the last 2 months, I've gotten, I mean, I guess if you go even a little further back than that, like a Skiff Drifter, a Holt Haptic, an Utzler Duck, a full DLC Arius, the Deadlock. I've gotten a custom Pena. I just opened a brown Cortex V2. I've got like,
damn it.
I've gone nuts, right? And a lot of that has been selling less expensive knives to fund these more expensive ones. So the money was kind of already there in my collection. It's just repositioning it.
Sure.
But I've been trying to like formulate why all of a sudden this is so much fun for me. And I think it's not that like $300, $350, $400 knives stopped coming out, because there is still constantly those knives coming out. But I did get to a point where it became really comfortable for me to get those, either by selling one or just by like, we're making a little bit more money than we were before. Like I can splurge on things at that level pretty readily. And these other ones I can't. I have to make moves to get them. And I think the hunt is like part of the fun. And so to me, part of it is like reaching for what's a little uncomfortable seems so much more exciting. And so like, picking up this Cortex V2, granted, I got it from Lefty EDC for a good deal because he was a chump and bought it and flipped it like that same day. And like, I'm still trying to like find good deals and be strategic about it and stuff. But it was like, that's not a comfortable buy. That's a pretty expensive knife. So I got to move some puzzle pieces around. And it's becoming more clear to me as we're having this conversation that I think that's part of why I've kind of made that little bump up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this is where I thought you were going to go with this, and I'm curious if this is if this plays into you. For me, a lot of it has to do with, like, for instance, this ditch pick by JB Knives, obviously a self-defense knife. This is not a custom knife, but it's a small batch handmade knife in his shop.
It's exclusive.
And to me, I'm starting to really get, and a lot of it has to do with having people on the show and talking to them, and like, wow, how often is it that you sit down and have an hour-long conversation with anybody? Like, it's rare. Yeah, it's pretty rare. And for
especially
me, I do
one-on-one.
Yeah, one-on-one, uninterrupted, focused conversation, and I feel like it's not like I feel like every conversation I've had with a knife maker has been at least really good. Some of them have been awesome. Some of them I've felt a real connection. Others, it's just like great connection for that hour, and I never talk to them again, or just a little bit here and there. But the point is in that hour of having that conversation and making a connection with that person, my love for their work goes up, and that's like total. That's something else. That is not my appreciation for knives. That's my appreciation for people, I think, and artists and artisans, and the amount of time it takes to make something high quality. I mean, like I told you before, I went to 8 years of art school, or no, like 7. I didn't go for math. I went to 6 years of art school, and still, like, I can't paint the way I want to paint. It's incredibly difficult to pursue something creative and be satisfied with it.
Yeah.
And not be too satisfied that you're not going to want to keep making it and keep doing better and better and better. Because that's what keeps an artist or an artisan or a knife maker going, is that they're not satisfied with what they've already done. So to me, that's a huge part of that's also why I like these Great Eastern Cutlery knives. It's not like it's a custom made knife, but so few of them are made that they got a lot of attention. people actually cared for the, however many 15 minutes they were working on their part of this knife. They really cared about it, getting it right.
Yeah.
Because there's only, 100 of them going out or whatever it is. And if it's not great, that's a huge percentage of not great knives coming out now. So there's an aspect to handmade knives, custom knives that is appealing to me. I'm not at the point where I'm custom, where I'm like, I want mokutai and this kind of steel and that.
Neither.
But get your hands on it and I'm happy,
Yeah, it's funny. So I tend to be like, there are people who are worse about it, but I'm a steel snob, right? Like, it matters to me what steel a knife is in, and I will drag certain steel choices, which, like, I don't know. Just here's an easy example of what has happened just in the last few weeks. The Demko brothers, who I respect immensely, and my 80/20 is one of my favorite knives that I own. I absolutely adore that knife. The 80/20.5 is also awesome. But they've just done a giant run of 80/20s that would otherwise be incredible, and they did them in D2. And I'm like, D2's been dead for 8 years. Like, stop. Why? I get you like working with it, but no one likes using it. Like, it's just, D2 is not exciting. It doesn't move the needle. So I can be pretty steel snobby, right? But when I look at the knives that I've gotten most recently, this brown Cortex is in CPM 154. The Skiff Drifter, CPM 154.
Yes.
The Duck is in 20 CV, so that's good. But my Pena Custom, CPM 154. I recently got the Monterey Bay Knives Sea Otter, CPM 154. I've been picking up these knives in CPM 154 because that's like the custom steel, which bothers me that that's the steel. But I'm not buying these knives for the steel like I am a $350 or $400 knife. Like, it's weird that the custom range gets a different set of like judgments placed on it, because it is so much more artistic and it's less utility, and it's like they're embracing that is the best way I think I can formulate it. Like, they're okay with the fact that it's not the greatest performance steel choice. It's the one they can put a knife and rub on and do consistently, or
Yes. And to me, that's acceptable, because that's someone that's not a fully automated system of machines that are handling the steel. And I'm not saying that people who work in 20 CV that's what it is, but first of all, CPM 154 154 CM is awesome steel. That's fine. No, but
there's no arguing that it's the best. It's fine. It works.
No. Obviously, there's no. But I could see how. I could see how a custom knife maker, not only is it nice to work with, I'm sure, nicer than some of these really super hard steels, but also it's sort of a jack of all trades, master of none, and it's forgiving. So you say you make this custom DeMarco Devil's Finger, and you send it out in 20 CV steel, someone doesn't understand, and it chips because it's so high, then you're gonna have to reblade it or figure out something. But 154 CM, or CPM 154, you're probably safe because it's tough, reasonably sharp, reasonably corrosion resist. It's reasonably everything,
See, I agree to an extent, but I also think the people who are spending $1,000 on a knife should be enough of an enthusiast that they should have a layman's understanding of metallurgy and know the difference between edge retention and toughness, right? Like, I don't know. I think it depends on the type of knife too. If you're designing a knife that you're positioning and marketing as like a slicey EDC knife that is designed to have excellent cutting geometry for EDC tasks, an edge retention focused steel is the right choice for that, in my opinion. And I don't think it's that arguable that it would make more sense to do a toughness focused steel that doesn't hold an edge as well, just because some idiot might try to hammer it through a nail. Like, that sounds like the idiot's fault, not the makers.
Right.
And I don't know how many people that are playing at that level of the hobby aren't aware, or are even using the things that hard, which is the flip side of that, where I think some makers are like, well, no one's going to use it that hard anyways. So why don't I use this steel that I can make look incredible 100% of the time and is easiest for me to manipulate in the ways I like to manipulate it, so that these people who are going to go put this in their safe can like looking at it because that's what they're going to do.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, do you think it's because people don't use their custom knives because they're so goddamn expensive? They get it. They're like, I'm just going to, and hey, 154, hey, it doesn't matter. I'm never going to use it. But
I think it's part of it. I think both. Yeah, it can be true in both directions, right? Like, and it depends from maker to maker, because some custom makers, it seems like with the relationship they have with their buyer base and like the demographic that fits within that buyer base, those people are like the use your shit crowd.
Yeah.
And they wear it like a badge of honor that they use the expensive knife. But then there are other makers that seem more like art show knife range where people are seemingly not using them so much. So maybe it's a little case by case, but I don't know. I tend to be in the like school of thought. The best way I can encapsulate it is if I'm buying something really high end, granted, this is coming from the guy who just bought a whole bunch of knives with CPM 154. If I could have it my way, if I'm buying a brand new Porsche 911, I want it to have a proper flat six that is tuned to make a good amount of horsepower and torque, and I want the car to be set up the right way. I don't want Porsche to make the decision that because a lot of people don't drive their 911 very hard, they're going to sneak a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder under the hood because it's real efficient, and like that wouldn't fly with me, right? If I'm buying a new Lamborghini, it better be at least a V10 in it, because that's what I want in my mid-engine Italian sports car.
Right.
And so like, I don't like the idea of making an excuse for the buyer base. I think whether someone drives it hard or not, part of me buying a tool is I'm buying the idea of its capability with any tool, right? Like when I buy a new axe, it's the vision of me going, and if I'm going to survive in the woods with this tool, it will not fail me. Yeah. Am I ever going to be in that situation with that axe that I just bought? Probably not. But that's why I got the $150 one and not the $23 one, right?
I think that is a huge point that you raised right there. And I think that is what probably drives the super steel market, if that's a thing. Yeah. And that's what got me into cold steel originally back in the day, which was not the quality of the materials, but like, man, if I ever need this, I want to know that I can do pull-ups on it.
Yeah, with the
can't do a pull-up, but
triad lock.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I want to make sure that this is the toughest survival, because I'm always in those situations. But it's not the fact that I'm not ever in those situations. It's that you want to know that what you're getting is capable. And I was thinking, it's funny, before you brought up the Porsche analogy, I was thinking, it's like getting a car, like getting a Ferrari with vinyl seats. Oh, they're fine. You can still sit on them. It's like, well, yeah, but I still like leather.
The car looks the same in pictures when you're taking photos of it. And it's like, yeah, but I know
probably drives just as fast, too. But, use your shit, right?
Yeah, that's one of those things. I have this constant, like, when someone accuses me of not using my stuff, and I know I do, it bothers me. But at the same time, it bothers me that people make those accusations, because like, why is it up to anybody whether a different person outside of their own self uses the thing that they spent their money on? Like, it's their object now, right?
Yeah.
And you get these weird, like, I don't know, guardians of the community who are like so mad at people who aren't hard using their knives. And it's that I don't know.
It's like a vegan, it's like how do you know if someone's a vegan?
They'll tell you.
They'll tell you. Exactly. And then they'll let you know how you're doing it wrong. And all that being said, I was a vegan, I did my time. So I'm not calling out vegans, but what I'm saying is, it's not up to anyone else what I eat. It's not up to anyone else what I do with my knives. I have a lot of really capable knives. Here's my XM24. I could do a lot with this. But anything I could do with this, I'm going to do with my cheap knife first, because that's just how I am, and I know that this was built for all this like hard use, but why should I use a $600 hard use knife when I could use a $30 hard use knife?
Sure. I saw somebody on Instagram the other day. It's just made me think of this. I I'm trying to remember who it was. Somebody was making the argument that people are too on, I don't know, too aware, or like they care too much about edge or blade geometry lately. And the post made me immediately like, how is that possible? How is it that on a cutting tool, people can be too concerned with its blade geometry?
Yeah, right.
Like it lost me immediately. And I think I feel that way about the steel advancements, like the arguments for metallurgy and improving it, and for blade geometry and for edge geometry and for all those things. I think en masse, the more awareness of those things, the better. And can it be a little bit annoying? For sure, especially from a maker's perspective, when people are seemingly never satisfied with whatever, like, because Magna Cut just came out, all of a sudden every other steel is not okay to use. It's not okay at all. Like, I get that that's annoying, but at the same time, like, if you just in the time I've been in the hobby and the community, knives are coming with better geometry now than they were 3 or 4 years ago. They're coming across the board. If you were to like have a median level of steel and heat treat of steel, it seems to have gotten better. And I think that comes from consumers being more aware of it and demanding to constantly get better and better and better. And so, like, whether someone is actually using it or not, again, seems irrelevant to me. Whether I drive my Ferrari or not, it better still have an incredible sounding V12 in it, and it better have a phenomenal gearbox, and it better have wonderful leather seats. Like, I want all those things, and if I'm paying the money for it, I should get it, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I find the psychology behind a lot of those like detractors of certain things to be fascinating.
Yeah, me too. And I agree with you about blade geometry. It's not something I paid much attention to, frankly, until maybe 5 years ago, or some people started talking about the behind the edge measurement. I'm like, what does that mean? You know, and I started thinking about it, looking at it, and I definitely have noticed that there's a much greater emphasis placed on slicing and thin behind the edge geometry than there used to be. It used to be that the gold standard was how robust the knife was. You know, is this thing, hard use?
Overbuilt.
Yeah, is this overbuilt hard use knife? And really thin blade geometry doesn't work well into that. You were talking before, you were outlining your ideal knife, and it sounded like the knife I just returned to you. Did you get it back yet? Hopefully.
It came yesterday.
Okay, thank God. The Oz Roosevelt seems to tick every one of those boxes you mentioned. And like I made a video about that knife, and I said when I first saw it and saw people going nuts over it, I was kind of like, oh, it's nice. It looks good, like
vanilla, but nice.
But I didn't get it until I got it in my hand, and I was like, I was very, very impressed with that knife. And that's not generally the kind of knife that I go nuts over. It's a little small, it's a little too EDC. It's not quite Rambo enough, for my personal taste.
Sure.
But I saw that and I was like, oh my God, that would fit so beautifully in with my 3-inch knife collection. What an outstanding knife that is.
It's probably my favorite knife to hand to knife people, because I've handed it to a lot of not knife people as well, and none of them get it. Not a single one. Like,
really,
it is a knife for the initiated. And think about it. It's a pretty simple, pretty vanilla looking knife. Nothing about this is overly complex seeming, right? And it's a frame lock, which if you're not initiated, this looks like many other knives. It doesn't seem all that crazy. You're never going to look inside and notice that there's 2 detents and a hardened interface. Like, the hardware looks fairly simple. The finishing isn't super flashy. It just seems like a knife, right? And if you're not an initiated knife person, you also won't know what middle finger flicking even is. And that's where this knife shines. And so, like, when I hand it to non-knife people, I love to just like see what people will say about it. And it's usually like, oh, it seems nice enough. And then if I ask them how much they think it cost, it's never $500, which is like, that seems insane that this simple little object could cost that much. And then if I go further to tell them that I could sell this right now for $1,200 to someone who'd be really excited to get it for that, they like, it's mind blowing to them that anyone would pay that amount for this object.
Wow.
But when I hand it to knife loving people, if I'm at a knife show and I've got my case with me or it's in my pocket and I hand it to a buddy who's really into knives, like I'm into knives, the light bulb goes off in the opposite way, where it's like, holy balls, how is this so good?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how is this detent tuned this perfectly? Oh, there's two of them. Like, how is it this molded to my hand and to your hand, and we have different size hands? Like, how does it feel this comfortable and this usable? And how is it so thin, and like, how's it so light? There's a lot of internal milling. Like, there's all these like, how does, and it's so fun to see the dichotomy there for me, where very few knives do I feel elicit that level of, because so many expensive knives have flair to them where it seems like it's expensive.
Yeah. Oh, look
This
at that
has
material.
no flair, right?
Yeah.
None.
It's like Bruce Lee, he makes it look easy. You know, try anything that Bruce Lee did, and you know, it'll take you years to get there. But when you do something so well, you make it look easy. And that's kind of what happened with that knife. I mean, really, like you said, on paper, you look at it, it's like, oh, that's nice. You know, it reminds me of a Sage 2 a little bit, or reminds me, you know,
a Native.
Yeah,
you
know,
carry drift. It's a little bit.
But yeah, I keep hearing that.
There.
I don't see that as much. The quiet carry drift. People kept mentioning
so
that they look
alike.
Carry
drift used to have a hole that was shaped a lot like this hole.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And when it did, before it got the thumb studs, they did look even more similar than
more
they do
like
now. But in profile, they're the same size. They're very similar shape, not identical, but
yeah.
I mean,
but
they're both simple.
Yeah, that really, man, that knife impressed me, and it was a good moment for me, because like you, I am very resistant to like things I'm supposed to like. You know, Forrest Gump was such a piece of crap movie, you know, and people were so into it. Of course, you watch it, you can't help but get into it. But I felt so manipulated watching it. I was like, why are people going? So it's like kind of the same thing. Sure. It's like Oz Roosevelt. Okay, I guess I gotta love this knife now. Oh, is it, you know? But
everybody agrees.
Yeah,
it's
right.
great.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. But then I got it in hand. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, Forrest Gump is a good movie. Okay, and this goddamn knife is great. You know,
this knife is the box of chocolates.
So I just saw his. He put an Instagram post out today or yesterday, with, yeah, I think it's got a acid wash black blade and purple handles. It's like, oh, I love purple on knives. I love purple anodization. I also love green anodization. But like, to see that purple color, it was so deep and rich. And then it had that same sort of golf ball mill. Is that what they call it? The golf ball milling. A golf putter. Right.
Yeah,
right.
It's like the face of the putter. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he brought to California Custom Knife Show, which was unreal, by the way, how that show went for him, because he wasn't expecting it, which is hilarious, because I talked to people before I called it, but he brought a variety of knives, and he had some just like those purple ones that he just did the lotto for, and yeah, his anodization work is really top notch, and the way that he anodizes Timascus to match the rest of the knife, I dig, because I can't stand, I'm not a Timascus guy. I just, anytime seemingly that I get knives with Damascus, like this Jaeger, I actually got a Timascus clip for, but I de-anodized it.
Oh, nice. Oh, how'd you do that? Heat?
A little Wink rust and stain remover, which I found out after using it a bunch of times, apparently is like volatile stuff, and I should have had goggles on. So do your homework, friends. But yeah, like I like Timascus as a material, but I can't stand when it looks like an oil spill. It just drives me nuts. I'm not into that. And Daniel Osborne has a way of using Timascus that's a lot like the knife, frankly. It's like understated. It's a way of dressing up his knife, but he usually does it in a way that's still not too much. And nothing about his knives are too much. Like, And if you meet him, he's not too much. He's like this humble Indiana, awesome dude who's like great to shake hands with and talk to for a few minutes. I can't wait. I'm going to have him on the podcast at some point here, but like, yeah, I feel like the knife embodies him in a way that's really fun too.
Oh, that's interesting. You mean like the knife itself is kind of like a reflection of his personality?
Yeah. Like,
in a way that you can see.
Like, I would like to think when people look at the Avant, they have that with me in a way. I don't know how much that ultimately shines through. I don't think that's something that the creator can even really see all that clearly.
Yeah.
But I hope that that exists, because I think there are a couple of knives that are that way, where it feels like the embodiment of the people it came from.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh man, I'm excited about your Avant. I'm excited about that project. I think that's so cool.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I really like to see knife fans, knife people like me, people who just love knives, going for it and figuring out a way to have a knife made. And the way you did it, I think you and Tim, right? Tim Renner? Ryan. I'm sorry. Tim Renner is someone else.
Ryan Rimmer.
Ryan Rimmer. Sorry. I think the way you and Ryan did it was the right way to go. You're both well, he's a designer, right? But you're both rabid knife guys, putting together all of the aspects of knives that you like and work, and then you got a beautiful design out of it. I mean, because that could turn into a hodgepodge, you know. Oh, I like this, and I like that, and I like a wave, and I like a choil, and I like a, you know, it could be too many notes. But the way you guys put it together, it's clean, but it's got a couple of dramatic moments. And to me, that blade is very dramatic. The way how thinly ground, you know, and you flick it with your thumb, and it sounds like a straight razor. I mean, it's so thin. It's like it's dramatically thin. Yeah. And to me, that's what makes that knife really exciting. I mean, it feels great in your hand. It functions awesome. But you look at it and you're like, okay, it's kind of a little bit like the Roosevelt. You look at it, you're like, okay, that looks like a very competently designed knife, and all this. And then you get it in hand, you're like, I get it.
It's amazing that something so competent could come from somebody so incompetent. That's all Ryan. Right. So for you, I guess we're getting close to where we kind of need to wrap up here, but where do you see your future with the channel or in the hobby? Or like, is there a future that includes an element of knife design? Is that something you see cool? Is it still the podcast, taking that to the moon? Is it like, what is the future of Bob DeMarco in the knife world?
Yeah, those are all, I mean, I see it as an encore career, because I'm at a point, I am not going to stop my regular job. If all of a sudden Knife Junkie was making me millions of dollars, then I'd have to. Sure. But I see, I would keep growing the show slowly but surely. Really, my goal for Knife Junkie podcast is for the amount of time I do it, to have an archive of as much as I can catalog of the knife world while I'm involved in it. You know what I mean? And to have sort of this is going to sound high-handed, but like have sort of a historical record of it. Yeah. Not only that, but I can't help but think like someday I'm going to kick the bucket and my girls are going to be like, oh, Dad, remember Dad, this and that. And then they'll have this all these hours of me talking, bloviating about knives. Yeah. It'll be something for the future for them. But really, like, I see this as growing the show, meeting as many people as I can, because to me this is a fascinating topic. My love for knives has been here since I was, since before I can remember, and I don't see it going anywhere. It's been 50 years, and so I see that happening. Design, yes. I mean, I'm always doodling. I have notebooks full of designs, but I think that when I'm, close to retiring from my job, or maybe when my girls are a little older or something, maybe when something else gives, maybe we move to a bigger house or something. I want to make knives. I want to make them. And I have no designs to have like a big company or to sell custom knives or anything like that. But I would like to do it the way some people do it. I think a lot of guys do it. A lot of knife makers do it now like this, where they just put out knives and then say, this is what I have. You want to buy them? I don't want to do the books thing. I've talked to
If
enough
you
knife
build
makers.
them, they will come.
Yeah. I think new knife makers feel obligated to open up books so that they know that they have orders across time, and so that they can count on that, and so that they can build their career. And I understand that. And then eventually a lot of these people tend to go away from it,
Right. Yeah. Once the demand is so steady that everything sells, then it's a little easier to have faith in not having 3 months of work penciled into a book.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm very handsy. I like to draw. I like to and to me, I've done maybe 20 stock reduction knives over the past couple of years, just with my, I have a 42 by 2-inch grinder in my shed, and sometimes I'll get a bug in my butt and I'll go out and do that, but it's very rare. It comes in fits and starts, but I really, really enjoy it. And to me, it's like studio art. It's like being in your studio alone, doing and for me, to me, stock reduction is like sculpture. You're taking a bar and you're removing everything that's not a knife, and then, or forging. I could see there are a couple of people in my area that do forging. I could see myself going down that road. But I think in terms of like, if I were to turn knives into a career at all, it would be with the podcast, because that's kind of what I know, broadcasting and this kind of thing. And it's just, I guess it's what I'm most comfortable with. But yeah, I want to someday see either a knife of mine that I've designed, made, or I could see myself making a prototype and then sending it to Tops Knives or some company like that. And you get like a
design out.
Yeah, and get a couple of pennies per knife, little tiny bit of mailbox money everyone. That's fine. I wouldn't be doing it for the money, but it would be a real thrill to, like you, see something that you've created in the knife world become a physical thing that you're holding,
tangible object.
Yeah.
So I love that answer. I found that thrilling. One thing that stuck out to me was you mentioned that there's a desire to kind of catalog the history in this moment of what's happening in the knife world. And it struck me because, like, I don't know that that's ever existed in like such an accessible way. Because how many makers do you think you've interviewed so far on your show? 50 to 100, somewhere like.
Yeah, it's like I recently counted. It was something like 98 unique. I've had a couple of people on. Well, I've had a number of people on repeat times, such as yourself and others. But I think it's about 98, close to 100 unique guests in that period of time.
Okay. And that's across just 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So imagine 15 years ago, there was no such thing as a knife podcast. That didn't even exist that I'm aware of. I would be floored to find out that there was. But even within the realm of like knife podcasts now existing, there's really not many that are like interviewing makers. I do it when I can, but not to the level you are. That's kind of like your thing in a lot of ways. And yeah, I don't know, like 15 years ago, I guarantee you there were some makers who made a few knives, maybe went to a couple of shows, sold a few knives, and then stopped making knives, and their legacy doesn't exist now. Like the number of people who know about them, that they even made knives in that time, could be counted on a hand. Like, and that's kind of sad in a way that now, like, you doing this cataloging of makers, both big and some pretty small makers that you've interviewed, who some of those are my favorite episodes to watch, because like, oh, it's a maker I know nothing about, and now I can hear them for an hour describe what they do and what they like. And there's a number of makers I've ended up kind of adding to my buy list in that way. But it's a unique thing that like this tool and your skill set now is able to do for this time, that I don't know who would be carrying that torch if it was you, or if it wasn't you. I mean, like, I'm not doing it on your level. I don't know anybody else who's doing it. And you've just spent 3 years creating that catalog already. So I think that's awesome that there's like,
Oh, thank you.
yeah, I don't know. Like, unless there was a Blade magazine article written about those people all that time back then, where is any record of them having existed? Like,
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny you should say that. Like, there are makers like Al Polkowski. You know, he's a fixed blade tactical EDC. You know, really cool stash. He died in the late '90s, and no one, like, not too many people remember him. You know, and he wasn't around during the blossoming of the internet and stuff like that. So yeah, I see what you mean. I see what you mean by that. I think ultimately people end up playing to their strengths, you know, and you know, you're an outdoorsman. You have been your whole life. I know that when you started Bearded Gear, that was your entree. You know, like I'll show off these knives while I'm hiking or while I'm at that really cool spot at the cliff where you drop the fake Strider, which I'm so glad that was fake. But you know, playing to your strength, and then people see, oh, this guy's genuine. You know, like, he's not. When I first started doing my videos in 2013, I was kind of like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, and like, how do I start this? What should I say? Hey, everybody out there, you know,
you cool cats and kittens.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to, like, you know, come up with something, and then realized, like, well, who do I like? Oh, I like the people who just turn on the camera and start talking, you know. And you know, with the Knife Junkie podcast, we don't do that. We have fun producing it and, you know, making it. That's just because we're playing to our strengths, and that's what's fun for us.
Yeah.
But what I consume, you know, if I were to listen to my show, quite frankly, I would press forward 30 seconds, forward 30 seconds, forward 30 seconds 3 times and get right to the interview, because that's what I do with normal podcasts. Sure. But, you know, I don't even know why I'm recommending people do that, but you know what I mean? Well, like,
how unique is it though that, like, I don't know. I consider it kind of a gift to the community, like, that what you're doing, what you happen to enjoy, what you're enjoying making, is taking something that, like, typically wouldn't have been free years ago, and you're cataloging a historical record in a fun, enjoyable, watchable way that, like, did not exist before. And because you have the unique skill set, you and Jim together working in the industry that you do, you're able to put this level of professionalism into it. And I don't know, it's striking me now. I already saw your channel and what you do as underappreciated and undervalued for how long you've been doing it. And like the level of effort I know you guys put into it, I feel like you should be 10 to 50 times bigger than you currently are. And I hope that happens, because, like, especially seeing that goal and hearing you verbalize, like, you want that to be part of what comes, like, one of the fruits of these efforts you're putting in. I can't think of a better way, being a millennial who responds to audio visual content, for there to be this record created of, like, the knife world right now, which is important to so many of us. So I think that's really, really cool.
Oh man, Jake, thank you. That puts wind in my sails for sure, man. Especially hearing you describe it the way you see it, because, you know, it's part of my my daily, weekly schedule, and it's just what I do. But to hear someone else put it in that perspective, man, it means a lot. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I want to keep doing. I want to keep meeting these people. I've met so many interesting people, and now ideas are starting to percolate about documentaries and stuff like that. And I can't make that stuff come true yet. But I've met so many interesting people doing this, yourself included, you know. I don't do 2 shows with people who I don't find, you know, interesting or have something cool going on. And that's another thing I want to do for this, for the knife industry, if I can, or in whatever capacity I can. But, like, you know, this isn't an industry with agents and creative talent agencies and that kind of thing. And I'm not trying to do that, but I would love, you know, like, when I saw the Avant, I was like, oh my God, he's got to come on and talk about that. Like, that's exciting news to me.
Means a lot.
And same thing with other makers, you know, and you know, to see someone emerge out of your hobby turning it into a profession, which is what you're doing. That's exciting to see someone who's like Bob Terzuola, who's been doing it forever, and now he's doing a collaboration with Tashi. Yeah, I want to talk to those guys about that collaboration. To me, those things are all interesting, like these little things that come up, you know, and advance our our hobby just a little bit more, that's the kind of stuff I want to cover.
Right. Yeah, I think I don't know. I love that you're utilizing the tools and your skills in a way that's fearless, because so many people, I don't know, I get the sense across generations that a lot of people are skeptical about the effects of social media on any given landscape. And I get that it can be scary because it's new and unknown and all these things. But I think it's one of those things. I've always seen it as like, if you're using tools as tools appropriately and you're imaginative in ways that like enhance them, then they're tools, and they could be used for good, they could be used for bad. But like your vision of using a small platform and cameras and microphones to like enhance the world that you care about just makes a lot of sense to me. And it's tools that didn't exist before. Like you can't get out of an old Blade Show article about a maker as much as you can get out of an hour-long plus interview with the person. you just won't get that. You won't get the intonation of their voice. And even like in the rare case that maybe there was a documentary about somebody, oftentimes those are a little more scripted or a little more like, there's a certain realness that comes from the type of content that is a podcast. And so to use it not just to like shoot the shit, but to like do something productive and creative in a, I don't know, in a sense that's building something is just, it's an admirable way to use it.
And I don't think you or I could do what we do in this platform without a really but just a cool community behind it, because people are very open, and a lot of us just get on in our own goofy selves, and it's just like, I'm not, it's like I was saying in 2013, I was trying, how do I be cool? What do I do to have my online person? No, it's just like I am what I am. I am who I am. And sometimes I'm goofy. Sometimes I'm stupid. I oftentimes forget things. I'm very often flaky, and people, no. That's titanium, Bob. It's like, oh yeah. Do your research. But the point is, I'm just being genuine. You're being genuine. And I think that it's a community of like-minded individuals. So we can do this. You asked me, before we finish, I want to answer a question you asked me a long time ago about guests.
Yeah.
Lot of great.
Who was your most exciting one?
So many really, really, really great ones. But I mean, everyone.
That by saying Lynn Thompson. That's my bad.
Yeah.
I'm glad you came back here.
It's Ernest Emerson, man. I had a 2-hour podcast with him, and I usually keep it to about an hour with the podcast, but we had a 2-hour podcast. And he's such a cool guy, and he's got such a very warm, kind of generous personality, and he's got such a rich history in this world, and also the martial arts world. And he, so I think talking to him was probably the biggest singular thrill out of this whole thing, just because, I love his knives. And before I ever met him, I kind of just loved him. I was like, he's such a cool guy, so to meet him, and then meeting him again at Blade Show in person and shaking his hand was a genuine, he's a real genuine guy. And I actually honestly feel like I was going to say pretty much everyone, but I cannot think of anyone who's been on the show that I haven't felt that way about. I have never ended an interview. I've ended a few interviews and been like, oh, well, he wasn't very talkative. That took more work on my part, but that's just personality thing. I've never interviewed anyone where I was like, God, I'm glad that's over. This guy, everyone seems very humble. Everyone seems, just out to be their best, to do their best, to put the best product forward. And, everyone's just trying to get by and to trying to make their mark. And knife making is not an easy row to hoe when it comes to that. So I think it really filters out a lot of the BS and the real good, dedicated people on the whole.
It's interesting too, like, I don't know in 2021 what the most appropriate way to say this is, but I think the knife community attracts a certain type of individual. And I don't mean even a particular gender or age or ethnicity or anything like in that sense, but a certain almost personality type and a like, I don't know. I just find there's commonality in the sense that I haven't experienced in other even hobby groups. Like in the automotive scene, it's not as congenial as it
Mhm.
is in the knife world. And I've found a very similar sense that almost all of the like actual conversations that go beyond like deeper than surface level with someone else who's into knives, even if they're into totally different knives from me. Like in line for Blade Show West, waiting for the metal detector of all things, which is stupid at a knife show.
Jesus.
I was between two people who were super into Medford knives, and I'm not into
Mhm.
Medford knives. But it was so nice to be able to talk knives with these dudes and show them that I was carrying an Avant, and I might have been carrying two Avants, but showing them the knife that I designed, which is very much not Medford.
It's the
Like
anti-Medford, right?
exactly. And it they were able to show me the Medfords they were holding, tell me what they liked about it. And I was able to be like, yeah, cool for you, man. You know, like, and I'm sure they could tell I wasn't into it, but
Mhm.
we were all excited to be around knives. And I just feel like I have a lot of experiences like that where sometimes there are people, especially in comment sections, who can get a little bit intense and not very fun community energy. But most of the like real interactions I have in the knife world have this weird level of commonality that I don't find that it exists anywhere else that I've experienced so far. Even in like church groups, it seems less
Interesting.
cohesive somehow
Yeah,
than
yeah.
it does in the knife community. And I don't know what it is about a tool like a knife that can do that.
Well, I think you just put your finger on it. You're talking to these Medford guys, and they're really into their Medfords, and you're showing them the anti-Medford, and they really appreciate your
That's going to
knife,
be the new nickname for the Avant, by the way. The
the
anti-Medford.
anti-Medford.
It's like
But it's
anti-gravity, but
yeah, yeah, right. But it's like live and let live. It's very much a freedom loving community. I think it's kind of like, oh, you like those? Oh, you like to carry around kitchen fruit knives in your pocket, and think you're a knife fighter. Oh, that's cool. I like these,
it's
but
got an edge on it. It's made out
yeah,
of steel. I'm into it.
yeah, doesn't take much, man.
I love it. Well, cool. So, Bob, we've gone just over 2 hours now. I know we meant to wrap up at this point. So,
All good.
before we go, why don't you tell the good people who are listening / watching where exactly they can find you and all things Knife Junkie?
Sure, sure. I post occasionally to Instagram. That comes in seasons for me, but mostly, and that's at the Knife Junkie. But mostly on YouTube, the Knife Junkie channel. And we do Wednesday supplemental shows where I just talk about my collection, new knives, industry news, that kind of thing. And then Thursday night is our live show here at 10 p.m. And then
Phenomenal live show, by the way.
oh,
It's a
it's
lot
so
of fun.
much fun. We have such a great time. It's kind of like this show right here. It's just a hang and conversation organically, not so much like I got to get information out of this person. And then Sunday is the day I have to get information out of these people, and I do the interview show. So YouTube, Instagram, YouTube mostly, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday.
And it's just the Knife Junkie on both, right?
Yeah, the Knife Junkie. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll have that link down below. But if you're listening, then I hope you listened well, because that's where you can find it. Well, Bob, thank you so much, man. Genuinely, I appreciate it. And it's fun. I noticed a couple of times that I allowed us to slip into a mode where you were interviewing me a little bit. And I knew that was going to happen
Ah.
because this was the first like podcaster on podcaster episode. And I love it. I'm super glad that we did this, man.
Oh, me too. It's a pleasure. And it's just a conversation. So I wasn't interviewing you.
That's
I was
true.
just asking your feelings on things. Thank you so much, Jake. I love what you do. I think you got an awesome channel. I love your perspective. I love your collection. And thank you for loaning me that Oz.
Anytime.
that was so cool. I really like that knife. I really, really like it. But what means even more is that it's very rare, collectible, difficult to come by, and you sent it cross country to me.
I'll get something else exciting in your hands soon. We'll make that a regular thing.
Ooh. All right. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, buddy. All right. Well, cool. This has been episode number 32 with Bob DeMarco of the Knife Junkie, and we appreciate you guys for listening. So we'll catch you on the next one.